So I am out of the hospital. I don't think I ever anticipated kind of bringing you guys along throughout my journey of that hospitalization, but I'm kind of glad I did.
Hi thinkers, it's Jess, a licensed therapist that specializes in both mental health and addiction. I want to touch on a topic of a channel that I know of and that I have actually referred some of my clients to watch, Living Well with Schizophrenia. Lauren and her husband have showcased a lot of behind the scenes of what it's like to have schizophrenia. In Lauren's case, she's diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. I love their channel. I love what they're doing. They really pull back the veil so you can see what it's like to have this disorder and go through the mental health system here in the US. Mental illnesses are really common in the United States. It's estimated that more than 1 in 5 U.S. adults live with a mental illness. That's 58.5 million as of 2021. Mental illnesses include many different conditions that vary in degrees of severity, ranging from mild, moderate to severe. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, or known as NIMH, in 2019, an estimated 5.2 million adults in the United States had at least one inpatient stay in a psychiatric hospital or unit. This accounted for approximately 2.1% of the adult population. I'm bringing this data to your attention so you understand that there is such a small population of people that go inpatient for any kind of psychiatric or serious mental health disorder. Most of us will never know what it's like to go inpatient, let alone psychotic symptoms. Lauren does a great job documenting her recent inpatient stay. I highly recommend to go check out her journey. Her channel will be linked in the description. So let's talk about schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder. Schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder are two related but distinct mental health conditions. While they share some similarities, there is also important differences. Schizophrenia is a chronic and severe mental health disorder that affects how a person thinks, feels, and behaves. It is characterized by a combination of psychiatric symptoms such as hallucinations, perceiving things that are not real, and delusions, holding false beliefs, as well as cognitive impairments and social and emotional difficulties. Symptoms of schizophrenia can be grouped into positive symptoms, which are added experiences like hallucinations, negative symptoms, or absence or reduction of normal experience like lack of motivation, and cognitive symptoms, impairments in thinking processes. Schizoaffective disorder combines features of both schizophrenia and mood disorders, such as bipolar disorder or major depressive disorder. It involves a reoccurring pattern of mood symptoms, such as mania or depression, alongside psychotic symptoms, including hallucinations and delusions. Those with schizoaffective disorder experience periods of mood disturbances and periods of psychotic symptoms that occur independently or concurrently. These mood symptoms are present for a significant portion of the illness and are not solely attributed to substance use or medical conditions. Schizophrenia is diagnosed when a person experiences persistent psychotic symptoms for at least 6 months, along with other characteristic features. Schizoaffective disorder is diagnosed when a person has symptoms of both mood disorder and schizophrenia. The treatment approaches for schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder can often involve a combination of psychotic medications, psychotherapy, and support services, all of which Lauren has in her support network. However, in schizoaffective disorder, mood stabilizers or antidepressants may also be used to address mood symptoms along with antipsychotics. So I want to take a moment to applaud Lauren for taking us behind the scenes of what it's like to deal with the illness that she has. Worldwide, only 1% of the population has schizophrenia, so most of us will never know what it's like to walk in her shoes. However, for those that are currently walking in her shoes, it gives hope that you can have a normal and well life with schizophrenia. I also want to talk a little bit about my experience with schizophrenia. I personally do not have a diagnosis of schizophrenia. However, my father, my uncle, and my grandmother all had diagnoses of schizophrenia. So I'm very familiar with what that's like to be a relative of a family member that has schizophrenia. Growing up, I would say I had a very interesting childhood. My dad had a lot of episodes that we just didn't understand. He would talk to himself a lot, talk a lot about God and religion, and also that our entire house was bugged. Again, I knew nothing about schizophrenia. It wasn't until I was in my early teens that my dad went inpatient for the first time that I can remember. I didn't know what was happening. I just remember visiting him at the hospital. And that experience was just a little traumatic for me because it seemed so sterile. My dad didn't seem very happy, but he seemed more normal because of the antipsychotics that they were putting him on. Here in the US, there is no mandated law that makes people that have serious mental health issues take medication. Even a court ruling can't make you take your meds. However, when you go inpatient, whether it's for suicidal ideations or if you're a harm to yourself or others, there is protocols in place where taking medications is just part of the process while you're in there for stabilization. Seeing my dad more normal was something I had never seen before, and it was really nice. But the moment he got out, he stopped taking his medications and was right back to the hallucinations and the delusions that I now knew was attributed to schizophrenia, because that's where he got his diagnosis. Fast forward a few years and my dad ended up going to jail because of his mental health, which is not uncommon. There's a lot of people that have schizophrenia that are either homeless or they're in and out of jail. My dad didn't go in and out of jail and he wasn't homeless, so he had a higher functionality because he was able to live on his own after my parents divorced. However, he ended up contracting hepatitis C while he was in jail, and because of his mental health issues, he didn't seek help. On top of that, when he finally started seeking help for having hepatitis C, the medical professionals made it really difficult for him to get care because they just didn't want to deal with his outbursts. He wasn't taking medication because there's no laws in effect to make him take his medications, and there wasn't anything to do because none of us could become power of attorney because we would have to legally show that he's some level of incompetent, and he wasn't. He was able to live on his own and pay his bills. One of the most heartbreaking things that I remember from the ordeal before my dad passed away from the chronic illness that he had was dropping him off to see a liver specialist and then turning around and having to pick him up 5 minutes later because they booted him out and banned him from being able to come back because he had an episode while he was in there. I could only imagine my dad was really scared on top of dealing with the symptoms. My dad had some moments of lucidness where he was aware of what was going on around him, but there was a lot of disconnection from reality, and you could just tell when you looked at him and had conversations with him. I didn't actually intend to become a therapist. If you guys want to know more of my story of how I became a therapist, even with my background with mental illness, let me know in the comments. I'm an open book. I'd be glad to share that, but this video would be way too long if I went into that right now. Once my dad passed away and I ended up going into this field, I swore I was going to advocate for those that cannot advocate for themselves. That is the population that my dad falls into. I didn't know how to advocate for him because I barely knew what schizophrenia was. Now that I'm equipped with more knowledge, I can help those that are going through similar situations or in need. This is why Lauren's channel really speaks to me, because I see what she's personally going through as a relative to a family member that's gone through that. So I know her husband and her children are experiencing some similar things. However, Lauren is different from my dad because Lauren is actively seeking help. I've worked with clients like Lauren, and it is wonderful when you see them do so well.
Having a hard time with feeling like falling back into psychosis, especially while I've been taking my meds and I've been doing everything right, or so I thought.
She talks about wanting to get more on top of her symptoms so she can trust her brain more. Unfortunately, that's part of schizophrenia, is the psychotic features tend to just creep up on you. Medication eventually isn't as effective as it usually is, so you have the symptoms start to bleed through, or what's called breakthrough symptoms. Hopefully her and her therapist will be able to work together to come up with a collaborative approach, but it's really difficult dealing with those symptoms because once you start going into psychosis, that's your reality. You don't know that you're in an alternate reality at that point. And that's where it can be really difficult to get on top of when those breakthrough symptoms start to happen when you're on medication. She clearly is doing really well with staying on top of her symptoms.
I was a little bit devastated for having my 3-year stretch of not being hospitalized come to an end there. And now this time it was a 4-year stretch that has now come to an end. And that feels hard.
She talked about a 3-year period of not going inpatient. This recent one, she mentioned it being 4 years. So she's getting better because the inpatient stays are getting longer apart. So what she's doing is absolutely working. She talked about being able to advocate for herself better. Because of having her channel, she's been able to equip herself with the knowledge that she needs to be able to properly speak to medical personnel.
I have trauma surrounding hospitalizations, and they're not always the most comfortable experiences.
Unfortunately, the experience that she has with it being traumatic going inpatient is not uncommon. Most of the clients that I've worked with that have gone inpatient talk about that traumatizing experience. Medical personnel in that space do the best that they can, but there's a lot of the noise distraction that she talks about, like the slamming of doors. As a disclaimer, I want to mention that I personally have not worked on any psychiatric ward. However, I have worked residential rehabilitation, which is inpatient for addiction. So I'm familiar with what that's like, but it's not the same for going inpatient at a hospital. Those are two different animals. But I just wanted to mention that I don't quite have the experience, but I can talk from a perspective of the clients that have had those experiences and they've shared those with me. I just want to end with encouraging Lauren to continue to remove that curtain to help demystify what being inpatient looks like and normalizing having mental health diagnosis with psychotic features. So I'm wishing her well, and I'm hoping you guys go and send her some love because she said she's not quite feeling her normal self yet, which is understandable. Hopefully in the upcoming weeks, she's feeling a lot better. If you're interested in watching some more of my content, click up here for a playlist. Until next time, stay positive and take care of yourself.